Speaking of things that sound out of place,
Mm-hmm.
Joe Budden was recently on Twitter Spaces.
Yes, he was.
Let me pull up the quote here of what he said because I think it's worth discussing.
He a fan, he a fan, he a fan.
That's not what he said.
Hey,
Oh,
hey, hey, run for your lives.
that's that one. That one fits.
Oh, on this episode of Things I Want No Part of,
Hey, I think it's worth discussing,
it is
and
worth
you did
discussing.
too. We did pre-pod, so Joe Budden says he didn't think taking down Drake was a one-man job. And so they asked him what he means, and he said in Twitter Spaces, I passed the baton to Pusha, Pusha passed the baton to Kendrick, and the job is done. But he's speaking about taking down Drake and how, this is not a one-man job. How this was something that was a team effort, so to speak. Oh,
Did
here you go. He says, I think I passed the baton to Push. I think Push passed the baton to Kendrick, and now the job is done now. That's how I feel in my head and in my heart. There you go.
I'm confused because why does he think that? Like, I get that him and Drake had their battle. I understand that Pusha T and Drake had their battle. I think that a good point that's been made since this has been said is that Drake has not disappeared. While Drake might be quiet now, I don't think Drake's career is over. But I guess I'm a little confused as to why, like, pass the baton. What do you mean? Because, like, were they all on the same label, or was it like they were, like, were they connected in some way, or I'm a little confused because I feel like these were three isolated incidences. And it just so happened that the person who really pushed it over the edge, partly because of the fact that the people are egging it on, not just the public, but people that are in the music industry egged this on and and propped Kendrick up. Not to say he didn't deserve it, but propped him up. I think that a lot of people were pushing for Kendrick to win this. I don't think that it was just that people were like, "Oh, let me sit back and see what happens." I think a lot of people were anti-Drake. Do you disagree with that? So many
I was
people were trying to fight Drake at the same time. I feel like a lot of people were anti-Drake. So and I'm not saying that to diminish anything that Kendrick did. I want to be clear, but a lot of people seem to dislike Drake. A lot of people were anti-Drake during the battle. Of course, if all of your faves hate this one person, what do stands do?
yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah,
So I think that the collective, everybody, eventually, or all at the same time, for one reason or another, even people who maybe like Drake a lot were very pro Kendrick slash take down Drake. So I don't know where this notion, like, how did Joe Budden get involved? I just feel like everybody wants to be able to say that they had something to do with it, which is why all of those people got involved with creating raps against Drake and whatnot. I feel like people just want to say, you ever have one of those friends who like they, I don't know, take a picture of you and you post it on the internet and they're like, ooh, let everybody know I took that picture. It's not like everybody want to have a hand in it so they could say that they were a part of it. It's weird.
I don't agree that people were propping up Kendrick. I do agree that a lot of people still have problems with Drake and wanted to bring him down a few notches. That I agree with. I think that hip hop collectively crowned Kendrick the winner. I don't think it was a podcaster. I don't think it was an analyst. I don't think it was a record label. I don't think it was a rapper. I think that hip hop as a whole, or maybe not as a whole, but I think hip hop crowned Kendrick the winner. And I think that very similar to the battle between Jay-Z and Nas, the person with more stands lost. When Jay and Nas battled, Jay was the person with all the great accolades, and Jay was the person with the huge amount of fans, and that some could say controlled the narrative. So in that instance, that's the same thing here. Drake has way more fans than anybody else in this. Well, let's just keep it on Kendrick. Drake has way more fans than Kendrick, way more stands than Kendrick, way more money than Kendrick, way more influence in the industry than Kendrick. But that didn't matter. The same way it didn't matter with Jay-Z. When Ether came out, it was clear to the culture that Jay took a loss. And it was clear to Jay too, which is another topic for another time. But I think the same is true here. I think the same way the culture crowned Kendrick the winner, it was an undisputed victory. And I think Drake know that too, which is why he fell back, which is why his last quote unquote diss record sound like an apology almost. Bless you.
Thank you.
Sounds like I ain't even really want to do this record. And I think that's obvious to Drake that he lost. I think he's not a good loser. Another topic for another time. Same as Jay-Z. Another topic for another time. But I don't think anyone was propping up Kendrick. I think Kendrick out artist Drake, out rapped Drake, out strategized Drake. And I think since then, what we've seen is Kendrick take that momentum and continue to ride that wave, while Drake seems to be struggling with himself in many ways, some of which we've covered here. Rapping on BBL Drizzy is one of them. Now we have footage of him basically performing and dancing to Not Like Us at his shows. It's weird. It's a lot of weird behavior, but I don't think this is a result of the industry, a podcaster, or artists propping up Kendrick. I disagree with that. I do agree with the last thing you said. Everybody wants to be involved. Everybody wants to say, I had a piece in it. That I agree with. Everybody in this instant wants to be down with Kendrick, wants to be down with the loss that Drake took, and say like, oh, I was there. I did this. I did that. And I think that is true. And I think that includes Joe Budden in this instance. Usually when someone says a baton was passed, it's when one person is kind of doing something with the other person. Example, at a Jay-Z concert, he brings out a younger artist and people will say, oh, this was Jay's way of passing the baton to that artist, right? Another example we've seen of that, a real life example we've seen of that, is when Drake was on the rise and Lil Wayne signed him, did records with him, had him on his tours, etc. That is a
Or the
passing of the baton.
or the literal sense of passing the baton, where people are in a race
Right.
and one person literally hands the baton to the
Right.
next person so they can start running. What are
Right.
you talking about, Joe?
Right. And
What
so,
do you like? You didn't do that, and it's fine. Like it's fine to say you're of the class of rappers who took Drake on. I think that's perfectly fine to say. I think that's perfectly relevant to the conversation because not everyone did. Not everyone does. I think a lot of people, I think we find up to a few weeks ago, we were finding that a lot of people, you know, are almost scared to talk about Drake in a negative way, or look at what happened when Yasin Bey said what he said and then walked it back. And you know what I mean? I feel like we used to until 2024, we used to see a lot of that where people didn't really want to have real conversations about Drake, or they'd say, "Oh, well, this one was like this," or whatever. They'd make excuses. Okay, here we are in 2024 where things have changed. It's totally fine for Joe Budden to say, "Listen, I was of the people who, felt like he needed to be taken down a peg, or felt like I was better than him, and I tried to show that." Okay, that's cool, but coming and saying that you somehow had some part in what just happened when you've been sitting on your podcast throne talking about it, commentating about it, which is fine. That's not a diss either. But what are you saying right now?
so
Like,
here's what he's saying. And what I think is this is a bad choice of words. And here's why. When Joe did the diss records against Drake, he said many of the things that have been said since. He brought up Drake's abs. He brought up Drake's writers. He brought up Drake sleeping with other people's women. He brought up a barrage of things that were used by Push and that were definitely used by Kendrick. In fact, Kendrick copied one of Joe Budden's lines from a diss record. Joe Budden said, "You can't Bell Biv DeVoe your way out of this one." Kendrick took that line and used that exact line. He just changed the thing "you can't do" uh, in one of the battle raps. I can't remember Kendrick's exact line, but I'm sure people will leave it in the comments. If you remember, leave it in the comments. So is he right in the sense that, hey, I gave them ammunition? Yes. Is he right in the sense that, hey, I gave y'all the blueprint of how to do this? Yes. In those ways, yes, he's involved because it's clear that Push heard those records and used some of that stuff. And it's very clear that Kendrick heard those records and used some of that stuff, including the line I just quoted. There's more, but including the line I just quoted. So, did Joe have something to do with this battle in a lyrical sense? Yes. In a strategic sense? Yes. Because at that time, Joe was told by an industry friend that Drake had a record coming that was dissing him. And he went and recorded a bunch of songs. History will show that Joe jumped the gun too early. The diss record never came out. They went and changed the whole song around. So all the new song said was a quick little jab, and that was it. A one-liner, not a real diss. So it looked like Joe was reaching and bugging out, but if you were tapped in, if you were listening to his podcast back then or any of those things, you know that that's what happened. So the strategy of continuing to strike in that format is also from Joe. So yes, is he right in the sense that I gave out a blueprint of sorts? Yes. Is he right that, hey, a lot of shit they said, I said first years ago? Yes. But the passing of the baton is a very bad word choice and example or metaphor, if you want to say that better. It's not a good way to explain it. He should have said it very differently. It may have been received in a different light because what he's saying is correct. The way he said it is totally wrong. The way he said it makes no sense at all because there was no baton passed, but there were plenty of other things available to these other rappers, these other MCs to use against Drake. Now, was some of it common knowledge? Yes. But there is something to say about the person who did it first. And Joe did a lot of it first. Abs, women, his uncomfortability being black and in the culture, his acceptance in the culture, lots of things about what was said in this battle with Kendrick and Drake were said by Joe in like 2017 or 2016. So in that instance, he's correct. But he didn't say that. And that is the problem. Had he said those things, which he said them on his podcast, and it made sense the way he said it on his podcast. But when he got into Twitter spaces, he did not say it that way. And that's what is the mistake, in my opinion. Because saying that you passed the baton, no, that's not how it worked. No, it doesn't make any sense.
And I also was with him when he said that he feels like the industry is trying to, squash Drake like a bug. I don't think those are words he used, but I was with him when he said that. That to me makes sense. There were X amount of people who dissed Drake in some way, shape, or form. People who are very prominent and very important to the music industry and to hip hop. So I a lot of times I understand his takes. I just this one where I was like, wait, what are you trying to say here? But yeah, so I guess you broke it down. You know a bit more than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It makes no sense the way he worded it. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm disagreeing with you. I totally agree. The baton thing was terrible. I just know what he was trying to say because I've been a Joe Budden fan since forever. So that's the only reason why I know that. But the casual person on Twitter doesn't know this. And so to say it in that way, the way you deliver something matters. It doesn't matter if you got a piping hot pizza if the whole thing is stuck to the roof of the delivery box.
My gosh, that is the worst.
And there you go. So you'd be like, man, did you get a fresh hot pizza from Domino's? Yes, I did. But unfortunately, it was just bread because everything I wanted was stuck to the roof of the box.
Yeah. Look
The
at my
delivery
spot
matters.
on it.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
terrible. Anyway, clearly
So,
that's happened to me before.
listen, it's happened to the best of us. How you think I know about it?
Okay.
How would I know about it?
And you were so excited for your pizza, and then it came,
So excited.
and someone said on it.
Smells good too. When you get it from the delivery person, you're like, ooh, what I get?
Piping hot. It's piping hot.
Piping hot pizza.
Meanwhile, it has no cheese on the bread, on the
And you
dough.
lift it up and you like, as you're opening it, you're like, what is
Look at that cheese pull.
Oh my God. Nothing.
The worst.
Nothing down here. It's just all up there.
Oh my gosh. Now I want pizza.